Welcome to the third edition of the Up Your Impact podcast series. Today, we are talking about corporate impact and how orchards can be a community asset. I'm pleased to have with me today two orcharding powerhouses, Katherine Rosen and Aleah Likas. Kath is the Chief Executive of the Orchard Project, a UK-wide charity that supports communities to create and care for shared urban orchards and food forests in the areas facing inequality. She has led the organization for over a decade, growing it from a small grassroots initiative to a national charity working across more than 700 community sites. Aleah is the Director of Strategic Partnerships at the Giving Grove, where she builds national partnerships that expand access to healthy, locally grown food through community-led orchard programs. Her work centers on bringing people and organizations together around shared goals, translating big ideas into programs that feel authentic, human-centered, and lasting. So I want to dive right in and talk about biodiversity. So biodiversity is on the corporate radar officially, with nearly 40% of UK businesses expressing concern about biodiversity loss and climate change, but only 3 to 5% currently are monitoring specific biodiversity-related risks that have to do with their businesses. In the US, 34%, that's 170 companies, of the S&P 500 are reporting on biodiversity policies or disclosures. That's a 100% increase from 2021. What have you seen as greater interest from corporates for local biodiversity building projects? Kath, do you want to kick us off?
Not much, to be honest.
Really?
Yeah. I think, in the UK, we have a new policy, which is called Biodiversity Net Gain, which is a tariff that developers have to pay when they build new developments, and there has to be a net gain in biodiversity. I think everyone in the voluntary sector involved in biodiversity was really hopeful that this would show some really huge impacts, both in biodiversity improvements, but also in funding kind of directed towards that work for NGOs. Just haven't seen it.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Kath. I think a lot of our corporate partners that specifically seek out the Giving Grove and organizations like ours, they're coming to us because of the multiplicity of causes that agroforestry represents. It's not specifically about biodiversity. It's all of the benefits of urban forestry, so the environmental benefits of carbon capture and urban cooling and all of the benefits that come with urban reforestation, along with providing a healthy food source and building community, right? There are all of these great causes that come with urban agroforestry. And by creating urban biodiversity is just another one of those benefits. So it's that multitude of good causes that, being able to tick multiple boxes in that CSR list, that's a huge attraction to a lot of our corporate partners. But I would say the biodiversity piece is probably further down on that list for many of them. It's not something that most of them are considering.
Do you give them biodiversity stats? Do you measure, this was what we noticed in this community before our project, and this is your impact?
I think corporates have got quite a baby understanding, really, of investment in our work in terms of the impact. So it's, people like the idea of orchards because they provide food and they have community impact. But in terms of biodiversity impact, for us, we're working on quite small scale. So the sites are very piecemeal. It's not, you can't talk about, huge hectares of biodiversity improvement. So in terms of trying demonstrating impact around those figures, it's quite hard to demonstrate a huge amount of impact. Where we're talking about that biodiversity, it's about local awareness of biodiversity and that journey that people begin to start understanding citizen science and kind of their impact on local environment, which can ripple out to wider understandings of what role we can play in averting climate crisis and nature degradation. We can get into the orchard geekery of that, but they're just such brilliant places.
Maybe we need to educate corporates a little bit about the magic of community-based orchards for adding biodiversity value into communities.
Definitely. And it's so easy to do as well. Easy to go and see them. There's lots of ways to talk about biodiversity in a really engaging way through doing bat walks or insect traps or bird songs. All of those different types of species are increased by having community orchards, bumbleweed monitoring, all those sorts of things. So yeah, I think it's a very easy thing to do to engage people around it. But I sense that corporate investment on biodiversity is kind of often out of in other places. We've invested in biodiversity kind of thousands of miles away, and we planted thousands of millions of trees, but we haven't actually seen the benefit themselves.
In the US, it's a little bit different. I'm American, as you all know, but I live in the UK and have done for 16 years. And there's a distinct cultural difference between community and the meaning of community in the US than there is in the UK. So talk to me a little bit about how your work brings community level impact.
Absolutely. Well, I could approach that question in a lot of different ways. Maybe I'll start with one of the key tenets of the Giving Grove. One of our key values of the Giving Grove is that we only plant orchards where we're invited in. Having community buy-in from the beginning is integral to community involvement, to community care and ongoing sustainability of the orchard, and also to ensuring that it invites everyone in from the very beginning. One of the unique things of the Giving Grove, other than the program manager in each city, so Giving Grove right now is in 17 cities across the United States. We have over 740 orchards. Those are current stats, growing by the day. Within each of those orchards, we have 2 volunteer stewards, and those 2 stewards are from the community and doing their work for the community. Those volunteer stewards then integrate other folks from the community and from the neighborhood into the work of caring for the orchard on a daily basis. About 30% of our orchards are located at schools or involve schools in some way. So some of those orchard stewards are teachers or other school administrators, parents. And it is just a ripple effect from those initial orchard stewards, the initial volunteers. They pull in parents, grandparents, children, and it becomes really a multi-generational group of orchard caretakers. And that multi-generational effect is one of the things that attracted me to the Giving Grove mission from the very beginning. When we talk about community, one of my favorite memories growing up was sitting in a circle of women, my grandmother, my great-grandmother, cutting corn off the cob in my little country hometown for freezing. There aren't many of those moments that happen. Those are truly special moments of community that you won't find elsewhere. And Kath, I'm sure your experience is similar.
Yeah, absolutely. I just really love the way you talk about the Giving Grove, actually, because it feels so resonant with the way that we run things in the Orchard Project. I always feel like you're a kind of sister from another Mr. kind of project, but it's wonderful to feel like there's this kind of mirroring of the work across the pond. It's really, really wonderful. That feeling of community is absolutely the major impact of our work. Just those days, especially where we're using food as a kind of bridge to bring people together. It's such a neutral but celebratory thing that people can do, and especially being outside sharing food. I think there's something so special about that.
I remember many, many, many days of my growing up, Aleah, outside in the back garden, shucking corn with all the aunts and my grandmother and my mom.
Those moments of being in the garden or being outdoors with folks that we love, or just folks that we're gaining a relationship with, those are such visceral moments of memory making that are just so special.
So I think what's really interesting about this is, from a corporate perspective, you would want to think that especially food companies would want to tap into that emotional moment, that they would want to be a part of that legacy, that multi-generational feel-good factor around food, especially community food. So let's talk a little bit about how you envision corporates getting involved and benefiting from the work that you do. Are they missing out? Are they engaging?
They do engage, and I think whenever they do come out, physically to kind of engage in our work, they love it. There's nothing better than going out on a crisp autumn day and working with your colleagues to pick apples and make apple juice. It's brilliant fun. We have a tradition called wassailing. Do you do that in the States as well? Do you have that?
Yeah. Oh, yes.
So it's Yeah, so centuries old land-based ritual, which is about going out into the orchards in the dead of winter and kind of waking up the trees for a good harvest. That's such a great opportunity to have an impromptu party in the orchard. There's so many touch points using orchards to engage people from businesses.
I think it's really important for me to hear from the very beginning that a partner shares enthusiasm for our work, that they are excited about the work that we're doing, that they understand our mission, what metrics we have to measure, and how we can share our story in a way that they can then share our story with customers. I think that honesty about our work from the beginning and ensuring that we aren't selling something that isn't true or framing our work in a way that is exaggerated. That's really important to me from the beginning. Of course, we have huge ambitions for the work of the Giving Grove in cities that we would love to be working in, but we're not there yet, and we're growing in that direction. So ensuring that fully representing ourselves honestly, that's my responsibility. Of course, from their end, as potential corporate partners, we want to feel good about the work that they're doing and understand how they're going to represent our partnership as well. Hope for a little bit of a commitment from our partners, just an understanding of how much we might be able to expect on a regular basis. And if it is a one-time gift, that's fantastic. It would just be really great to know that upfront so that we aren't anticipating future funding falsely.
As with all charities or nonprofits, having access to multi-year funding is really the golden chalice for us, because the work that we're doing, it's not short term, it's long term. So when you have investment just over 1 year, it's really hard to continue. You have to keep constantly refunding for those projects. So it just makes your life more about kind of looking for money really rather than doing the impact. So what good looks like from our experience of working with big corporates is commitment to multi-year funding. Where the partnerships have been really successful is where there's been almost, there's been co-design on the program, and it not to be a donor-led initiative. The first big partnership we had was with Heineken UK, because they own a lot of cider orchards, and that was truly transformational for the Orchard Project. Their investment enabled us to grow from a small London-based operation to a national charity. And what was really incredible about that partnership was there was absolutely honest co-design on the development of what that was going to look like. They gave me the free rein as very small part of their kind of decision-making machine to say, right, well, this is what will work and this won't work. So, for example, some of those things were not about importing volunteers kind of from their corporate volunteering program into orchards and then leaving again, because as Aleah was talking about, the sites that we're working on are very kind of held by those local communities. So we do have volunteers, corporate volunteers that come in, but what we're really looking for is investment in our work, which is the impact that the corporate partnerships give us. And we talked about some more meaningful volunteering opportunities with them as well. So one of the things that we tried was to actually recruit volunteers from within their company to be the volunteers in the orchards local to them. So they went through the same program as our community volunteers, and were able to advocate about the charity internally because they'd actually experienced it really from that kind of the bottom up. That was what good looked like to us. I would say on the flip side of that, where we've really struggled with corporate involvement is where investment is just cut suddenly. When you're working with a charity partner, we don't work on the bottom line. We're working to make deep impact in communities. And so when funding is just suddenly withdrawn, that makes it ethically very difficult to fulfill our commitments. So we're working from very, very different value systems.
I see a lot of big corporates, and some that I used to work for, invest in large-scale agroforestry schemes in the global south. And they never see those implementations. They never really understand if they are having a positive impact from a carbon sequestration perspective, a biodiversity net gain perspective, or even a community perspective. And they're usually not biodiversity rich. They're not food forests. Listening to you two, all I can think about is that corporates are missing out. They could be benefiting so much more richly by investing in community-led agroforestry programs in their own countries. What do you have to say about that?
glad to start here. I think there's something so special about working in and giving to the communities where your organization is based or where you may have operations. I think for any organization, their biggest impact for themselves, for their stakeholders, is going to be where their business holds customers, where their employees live, work, and play. It just feels right to me that the dollars that they were to donate to a nonprofit would go so far in supporting those communities. So to me, that just feels good. That just feels right.
We've just partnered with a major UK supermarket around that exact thing. So they're very interested to have impact in the communities that their customers are from. And that's wonderful. To your point, Courtney, about kind of there being a big focus on biodiversity, it's a difficult metric to look at, especially with community orchards. And I think where corporates are really, the really innovative ones are looking at the whole social and environmental impact of community orchards, the social impacts in terms of how that spreads out into the wider community, the savings on healthcare provision, or it goes wider than just biodiversity. It would be wonderful if people would kind of embrace that a little bit more and feel like it's not just this one goal, it's how all these things connect in a wider picture.
Let's talk about that wider picture for a second. Let's just educate the audience. What are the social benefits associated with your work?
So I generally sort of talk about them in terms of environmental benefits. So benefits to new species, preserving heritage varieties of fruit and things like that we have in our orchards. The social benefits to the wider community. So as Aleah was talking about, the breaking down of boundaries between different people and communities, creating that real deep sense of community connection. And we're in such a poly crisis at the moment. We need to have all of these community building has got to be the heart of our strategies to how we're going to survive through it. So we're in such a terrible dark time. And the solutions that we're practicing on the table now are the things that will be taken up. So I almost feel like we're demonstrating this alternative, positive future. And then obviously the individual benefits that people have through being involved in our work, through being out in nature and having better nature connection and learning new skills and meeting the neighbours and reducing isolation. So the impacts around these projects are absolutely transformational. It's not just about we're counting more bees or we've sequestered more carbon. It's the whole system that's being improved.
The effects on positive mental health, I know all of us are hobby gardeners as well, and being outside, hands in the dirt, there's nothing better than that. And for many of the folks that benefit from orchards, positive mental health effects, it's a huge piece. In addition to ending that social isolation, the public health benefits of that across the board. The obvious part that we haven't touched on is access to healthy foods, and a huge benefit to communities. Our average orchard size is only about 15 trees. It seems tiny, and even that can produce as much as 9,000 servings of fresh, healthy food each year. It's a major impact to a neighborhood that otherwise wouldn't have a grocery store with produce.
Absolutely. As food security supply chains are just there's so many such dire predictions about what's going to happen over the next couple of decades. We need to be planting those fruit trees now so that we've got all these locally sourced types of food available. We know this is coming, that we can see it coming, right?
I do a lot of work in climate adaptation, and because I have a horticultural and an agricultural background, I geek out on what is the future of food security and what do those value chains look like. And it's one of the reasons why I wanted to be involved with the Orchard Project, because I fundamentally believe in community-led food. And I also believe that everyone should grow some of their own food at home too, whether it's in a container in the back porch or in the ground, whatever they can. We have 2 apple trees and we have more apples than we can possibly eat. Like, I'm giving them away to all the neighbors and they love it. It's so good. It's such a good feeling to produce your own food. So I want to talk a little bit about how much does it cost to plant with you guys? Because I think corporates might think that they need a lot more than they actually do to get involved with this fantastic work that you do.
Breaking ground on a new orchard costs about $5,000 to plant the new orchard and support it for the first year. And then stretching that to establishing an orchard to its first harvest, we quote it about $10,000 US.
We usually quote between about 10 and 15,000 pounds for an orchard. On a sort of tree by tree basis, that might feel expensive. It's all of the infrastructure work we do with the community, kind of creating social infrastructure, and that takes a bit of investment. We see lots of fruit trees trees being planted, just put in the ground. No community engagement, no co-ownership of the site from the local community, no aftercare, no watering, all of those things. So the advantage of kind of investing in that model is you're creating really high tree survival rate. Over 95% of our trees are surviving. So it's an investment in those trees for the next 100 years.
You ladies are telling me that for about 50 grand, you can build a beautiful orchard and take care of it and build the infrastructure to maintain it for 100 years.
And moreover, Courtney, that also invests in the staff for us. So each of our affiliates has a program manager that train the trainer model across their program. So training additional stewards, training additional volunteers. And then they take that knowledge and they spread it throughout the community. They spread it to additional children and adults that can take that knowledge, plant additional fruit trees in their own yard. So it's exactly what you just described, and so much more than that.
It's easier to talk about communities of orchards rather than one specific orchard. Funders get hung up, how much does one orchard cost? One orchard is not great. We want lots of orchards. We want, we want cities where we've got this infrastructure of lots of different orchards, because every site will be slightly different, but they'll all have similar needs and they can all network and talk to each other. And you're creating this kind of microcosm of people with similar skills and resources, building those connections. You're building resilience into those cities. It's more useful for us to kind of think about, at a kind of citywide level, what could we make a really big difference in this city location?
As we talk about biodiversity benefits and as we talk about building those pollinator pathways, when you have that network of orchards within any given town, it amplifies those environmental benefits as well. If I get that sense of having a shared passion for our mission, it gives me so much more confidence and excitement in sharing that potential partnership with my team at the Giving Grove, and so much more hope that this is going to be a great and long-term partnership.
That's such a beautiful answer. Absolutely agree.
Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me on this Friday. I'm going to make sure that your contact details are there so that people can reach out if they're interested in sponsoring a city or planting some orchards in their local communities where they operate, and how they can get involved and engage with community food programs. Just fantastic to have you.
Lovely to have the chance to talk about orchards. Always love this.
Thank you, Courtney. Nice to meet you, Kat.